Welcome back, audience, once again. I have such a refreshing rain going on right now. Too bad I got some leaks in the roof. Not too, not too much, but you know that's the thing with those leaf roofs. Other than that, all is well. Thanks for asking. I got a little time. My green tea to talk about interesting things. There's one thing that I saw. I don't know if you noticed as well, which I like to question things now, especially. You know, to have this open-minded skepticism, and what does it mean? It means pretty cool, and I mean this is like the primary instrument of how to do well in this reality. Open-minded skepticism, because one second. This is a perfect example because I hired people to patch up the roof, and they left a hole, and I didn't go to check to see if it's done well, and I found that there is a hole in the roof after they've done the work. Things like that, you know. That's one of those things living in Mexico. Don't believe anything. Don't fucking believe anything people say. Check everything. Like, I mean, normally, like in more civilized society, there is some degree of trust that you can have. Like if you hire somebody to do the job, that they're gonna do the job right, and you trust in their capacity. And most of the time, it's fine, right? Depends where you live, and depends what kind of people are around you, of course. But that's the thing. So speaking about this open-minded skepticism, one of those primary approaches to life is that don't have any beliefs. If somebody says a story about something, right, and it's like a nice anecdote and whatever, don't take this, you see, very important, do not take this as a basis of your reality, because that's a belief. And a lot of people, when they have insecurities, they grab hold onto that story and take this as their reality, so it makes them feel secure. But it's not the way to approach this reality, of course. This is why, what's the point of anybody, telling the story about something? The point of it all is that it is an invitation at the most. Don't take this as a basis of the reality, but say, well, let's find out. Let's see if that's actually the case. And you'll find out that most of the things in life, there might be based on a belief that under pressure of the real reality, it cracks. Right? So I like to investigate things. Like a lot of things that you may say like it's difficult to investigate. But if you have access to the astral world, for example, that question kind of becomes resolved, and there's a lot of things that can be investigated. Um, on that plane, and the same thing on the physical too. Like, let's see what it's like, because this is why, like, everything you see on screen may appear a certain way, and the most that you can do is to say, okay, that's seems interesting. Let's see if this is actually the case. You know. So, what does that mean? That means that the basis of your reality is not being projected to be true if it's not known to be true. Like, if it's just a borrowed memory. You see, that's the thing. This is why ordinary people are evil. Because they do nothing to self-correct and improve their own level of incoherence, and they just grab hold onto anything that is given to them, right? So if the governing body is corrupt, then all the rest of the people who are, ordinary and don't do anything to have like any kind of self-authority are also going to be the same. Now, in this type of reality, if you change the governing body, and so the system becomes correct, not corrupt, and just and fair, which is not that difficult to do, by the way, you know, then the regular people will reflect that and, take that to be belief. But it'd still be borrowed. You see? It's still, just because somebody told you the truth and you believed it and that's how it works, but you never tested it yourself. Even if it's true, you have not done your due diligence to see if that is the case. And in some cases, maybe when you do not have any capacity to self-correct, the best thing that you can do is to just trust somebody who can do that and who can build a frame which you can trust. So actually, ordinary people are not intrinsically evil, but they become so if they just submit their authority to a corrupt entity. And they become evil because they contribute to it. And they contribute to it because they're gullible. And you see that the way the will works on this side, before the level of incoherence is deep in their soul has been addressed, and all of that incoherence is trying to be patched up by the memory, the holographic film that is trying to correct for the incoherence and trying to get a right type of result, even though it's coming from disorder, and it's always going to be chasing your own tail and playing a whack-a-mole game, you see, and it's just not life. This is why, like, it's so important to just like forget about that will that makes you do things out of habit, and start putting all that this attention onto the source of the incoherence. That's where it becomes, alchemy becomes important. But then you discover that coherence thing, and on the other side you see that the will is still there, but everything is different. Everything is so different that like I'm trying to see, like, even the skills, right? Like even the skills that you learn, like techniques and stuff like that, from this other side, it doesn't seem that you can access them the same way. You have to learn it differently. You have to learn the same thing that you knew before, but now you can't seem to access it because it's been done through this type of forced will. And so now you are learning a skill, the same skill, but not through the forced will, but through harmony. And so that's very interesting to me. Because there's something else that's performing that skill. It's the intelligence that's performing that skill, not the ego's will. It's much more spontaneous. The skill tree is available for you to use, and you still have to kind of learn this through the repetition. But when it's applied quite intuitively, not like robotically like before. Okay? So, I want to talk a little bit about this will. I was looking at this and I was asking this question: why all of these supposedly awakened people, spiritual people, are so weakly willed? And the only thing that I can say is that they're not really awakened. They went to sleep even more. Because the engagement with reality is like has no curiosity. There's too much repetition in there. Um, there's a belief that there's no need to use the will, and if somebody can push them around, they just move like a, like a leaf in the wind. And this is not how I came to know the spirit. Spirit is powerful. It is inspiring you. It's very powerful. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about, honestly. And their behavior as well. It's like, okay, it's like a kindergarten, you know. You have this dynamic of some old fart talking, and then these other people just like listening to, like, oh, thank you for your wisdom. Let me a little more of that. I'm sorry, but it's a clown show. And then they meet somebody who is inspired and driven by from the soul, and it just obviously reminds them of their own lack of spirit moving through their own bodies because they're so passive and useless, and that doesn't rub them a right way. So it's pacification is not spirituality. Spirituality is freaking intense. It's intense as fuck. It requires so much of you. It requires discipline. It requires focus. It requires experimentation. It's there's nothing can be more engaging to life than this, which is that's what really makes you alive. And I know that some people may have may have had glimpses into what it's like after in drugs, right? Like if they take drugs, like all these stimulating drugs, like cocaine or like LSD or you know, or mushrooms or whatever that may be, right? Or meth even, right? Or amphetamines. And why do they like that? It's because how alive it makes you feel. Well, guess what? Like living life directly gives you so much intensity there that you have all of these things when it's appropriate. You always feel like you're on some sort of uh, drug, but with clarity. Sometimes, like when I'm really passionate, like about teaching something, like trading, for example, I like a Bitcoin trading, for example, when I do my classes, um, I still do sometimes like one-on-one classes with people, and I still trade some Bitcoin, small amounts, but you know, I get some reasonable success, but um, to to get that like next level shit, it requires a certain type of um, skills that I'm developing. But yeah, like when I teach that, I really get super excited. It's just like I'm on coke, and some people thought that I am actually taking coke, but you don't have to take coke when you're doing something that you're very passionate about. And sometimes there's anyway. Okay, I don't want to expand on this subject, but this is the field of energy. Like one thing that you notice upon alchemizing that energy is that you become that thing that you kind of ran away from. And because you are the thing that you ran away from, you have all this energy. And now it seems quite easy for you with your intent to change the shape of energy, which means now you can change the feeling. And you have the intent of changing the feeling, and it works because you're so close to the source. And that's the theurgy came. Now that alchemy is done, you have all this prima materia, which is you, your soul, and now you're taking shapes, different frequencies, different vibrations, and you can play with that. Like take this one, take that one, and it's such a thing that it's magic actually, but um, cannot be accessed. This magic cannot be accessed unless you are an alchemist. This magic cannot be accessed unless you are an alchemist. This is why you cannot control this energy unless you first become the prima materia. Otherwise, you are subject to that energy. And it's not bad if you're subject to a really nice magic. But if you're subject to some nasty ass magic, you're going to have all sorts of negative emotions, negative thoughts, and negative behaviors, and so on. And you trying to control emotions through will is obviously going to take you even to the darker places. And this is what basically the whole Luciferian satanic type of approach to life is. It's like control the emotion, control the fundamental errors through will, right? And that's pretty much in the essence. The will of the mind or the will of the body through this. You see what I'm trying to say? The magic, but it's just like a fighting with yourself, you see. It's temporary, it crashes, and it does seem the only benefit it creates is for somebody else who are alchemizing these energies, because people who create that very high level of distortion when they seek to fix that emotional lack or that incoherence through will, okay, when they do that, they create a lot of that, disgusting energy. And then, as for the alchemist, just like as a manure for the farmer, thank you very much, that's more prima materia for me, because you're misusing it. You take all of that energy and then you use for your white magic. If they continue to do this, take more of that energy. And so the result is that their intent stops working. Now the gravity is towards the light. They cannot escape the gravity of the light anymore. They cannot, and all their will starts crashing. So you got to see that everybody who is manifested through will, all of that is taken away. Okay? It's a very nasty way of living life and misuse of energy. And I realized that. I saw it, and now I see it's like, if I see a person, quote unquote, successful, has this person created everything through sheer will? Then you gotta be careful with that person. Definitely don't trust that person. Whether they created through magic, through the sex magic, or whatever, or whether they just relentlessly, like a maniac, kept on through the force doing it until it broke through, right? That's this maniac type of approach. No, that is not the success. But there are a few people, quite a few people, who do have that type of calm and that confident aura about them, and they are powerful in imagination, and they are powerful in action and smart and all that, but they have the capacity to alchemize the energies. They didn't start with the hurt in order to resolve it. They dissolved the hurt first and then went for it. And that's just completely different. And we need more people like that, and less people who are creating everything through will. And the most, like, almost like abominable thing, that there is this almost like a pat on the back for people who accomplish things through sheer willpower and have still this deep incoherence within their heart. It's like a well done kind of thing, and there's these all sorts of medals and rewards in the society. Oh, you've done really good, and then there's a belief that they've done really good, and then they hold this reward that they got, and thinking like, why the fuck do I feel so horrible still? I gotta do more of that or whatever, right? Wrong. So wrong. And then there's so much reward, so much incentive for that people pride themselves in being stubborn, which is, it's sad. I don't know, like at first I was kind of angry about this, like to be stubborn about doing something so ignorant and not even questioning, so being so invested into something that can be completely wrong, but because you get this reward, there's being convicted that is right because I get the reward a little bit. But what's the cost? How many people are hurting because of your reward? You see, and how much are you hurting because just to get that temporary reward? Wrong. And so
and not to just talk about it, right? Because like I said, I walk my talk. I know exactly more, what, excuse me, I know exactly where do I have, excuse me, I know exactly where to apply more discipline in my life. I recognize that. But I do one at a time, and it's not easy to permanently change yourself, right? There's so much alchemy that you have to do. Like once I just decided to say like I'm no more weed, there's just so much alchemical things that they have to go through. Um, and it's intense, and it's but I like it. I learned to like it. What else to do? There is a way to watch that thing that is seemingly separate from you, whatever that negative feeling may be, and watch it in a specific way. And that specific way, it's quite intuitive. It's like you're looking for like a specific way to look at this, and you're not asking for it to be anything at that point. You're just trying to like um, give it exactly what it's missing. At this point, you're not asking it, to be something. But once you give it what it's missing, it becomes this fluid now, energy. Whereas before it may have been like rigid or dispersed or whatever. But now through the alchemy, you created that plasma energy that is alive, and it can become air and scatter and sparkles like air droplets. It can become solid, can become liquid, and then it can become intense, like vibrating, and anything in between. Now you can ask of it to be something, but you're not even asking of it. You are it now. You become it. You're just like, okay, I want to be this, and then you that. But that can only be done once the prima materia is there. And I've noticed that more addictions I say no to, the more challenges I encounter in an alchemical sense, and the more intense that prima materia is. If at first I had just like this small intensity sparkles going on, just like a very mild bliss, now it's, you know, it can get pretty intense. So it's just like a collecting the pieces of your soul from the ego. You're crushing the ego just like that coal, and you find the diamond. It's part of you now. Then another one, and just, that's the game, to keep on growing that prima materia within you. I don't know what else really to say. I know that that's my direct experience. It's not like what other people are talking about. They're looking for some sort of escape. But how many people are saying? Very few. But they're saying, hey, look at that thing that you don't want to look at. You know? Or you do, or even, for example, you don't want to look at the fact that there is nothing to you, that there's just space, right? Like that's part of you. That's one of the things to face. There's four elements, right? So there's a fear that there's just there could be such an intense peace that that there's nothing there, right? There's no identity, nothing. It's just there might be fear of that. So, but when you become aware of it, when you just place your attention to that fact that there's just void, there's something brilliant that starts happening. And when it starts happening, it's a mystery, right? That's the thing. That prima materia is mysterious. It's like this perlamuttra. It's like, and you let it be how it wants to be at first, right? And it's almost like you're saying that, okay, just be what you want to be, surprise me. And so it just sparkles and does things, and you feel this like, oh my god, it's just like it's a trip. And it's always a mystery, and you don't, because you don't specifically ask to be anything, and it can be whatever it wants to be. And it's always mysterious, it's always new, it's always novel. You can never be bored of it, because it's, I don't know how to explain to you, but it's so, anyway, it's real and it's alive. But when it's completely free, when it can do whatever it wants to do, and then you can take some sort of shape. You can ask it to be something, right? Like you add a little bit of like will to it, right? A little bit direction. But that will, that direction, it is quite spontaneous at the beginning. It is not this very straightforward will. It is just a way to play with energy. And like, how do you play with something, for example, like a silly putty, right? It can do all sorts of things, and if you want to just, you can stretch out and so yeah, you can play with it, and you can create those cymatic states within you as just playing around, creating music and whatnot with your emotions and feelings. you know I've been talking about this for quite some time, but seriously, it's super super interesting. So there is always this respect of it being a mystery, and it's a combination of that mystery and harmonization of the energy. It's like you harmonize energy, but only according to that mystery. Does that make sense? This is why this will is very gentle. This will, it works very well when you do it very gently, moves that energy gracefully, without the force, without the, you see what I'm trying to say? It's, I think somebody was saying like tuning is, or playing is the best way that I could describe this form of will. Okay, because I'm talking about will right now, but there's a different form of will that you're used to. For example, like astral will. Now that you go into the images, again, like if you'll notice, for example, for you to create any kind of object in the astral world, you cannot just use that rigid will that you may have, used it in a conventional sense to get you done. It's that forceful. It crashes. You can't do that. There's a little bit stronger will, then harmonization is not as gentle, because you do need apply a little bit of that intent there, but there's a lot of, degree of allowance there as well. And in physical too, becomes perhaps like 80% of, even when you do the most forceful thing, like lifting weights. Over there, if you just all force but no allowance, you'll also not gonna enjoy it, and you're not gonna be as effective to it either. That's why, like right now, the way I train is so different, very very different. To me, there's two things that are important right now. Is this the energy flow or blood flow with intention and awareness of the muscle moving, the muscle moving, my nervous system being engaged, my energy flowing. Everything has to be done. If I force it, my energy stops flowing. So I don't force it. I go in exactly. So that creates the maximum energy movement into the muscle and my entire body. Okay, so most of the exercise I do for the blood flow, um, I do a lot of isometric tensions, a lot of extreme stretching, anything that, like I train more like gymnast right now than bodybuilder. You see, because I'm not competing in bodybuilding, I don't need, and I mean, honestly that's more effective. I think the people in bodybuilding would have like more success with this. Maybe not, because this is more dynamic, but I have to say that this type of training prepare you the best for the for the martial arts, for sure. And then I do one where it goes intense and very heavyweight, but I do just compound exercises on that. Like that's the only, on bench press, deadlift, and squats is where I care about the strength. You know, um, the rest of it, the strength is not important. What's more important is the is the energy flow, and it's so very enjoyable when energy is flowing while you're moving. Uh, the thing, it's so much more present and enjoyable to work out like that. But I'm not denying that the strength and the compound exercises are important, and it's a very different type of energy when you train for blood flow and when you train for strength. But the combination of the two is amazing. It's really freaking amazing. It reduces the chances of you getting injured significantly. Your muscles are quite flexible and dynamic, alive, um, and you got that strength going there too. And I get the results. If I go, I tried it. If I went to all strength and I just trying to heavy weights and only care about that, first of all, my workout is not that enjoyable. I feel exhausted. My muscles get dull. They don't recover well. And I'm like, no, you know? So, no, I cannot train like that. But if I move slowly, like if that particular day, for example, um, I cannot go heavier than kind of lightweight without losing the feeling, without losing the sensation, without losing that connection with my body, then I do that. Then I'll do a lot more of that. I may do, I don't know, like if I normally would do like one set with the heavy weight, at that particular day I may do like 3 or 4 sets with the very lightweight and going um, for the uh, for the for the blood flow, and I would be focusing on that. I would not even count how many I do. It does not matter to me. It just matters the blood flow, and I don't want to force this where it just becomes like too painful. I want to that exactly at that sweet spot where I'm pushing it, but there is still allowance there. I don't. I'm not redlining, and my muscles respond so good, and I started, feeling them. I started having these much bigger muscle bellies, and like my muscles love when I'm kind of edging, but not redlining. That's for sure. No ego, basically. No ego, right? So there. So that's about the will on this side. It does not disappear. It changes. it becomes very gentle in your soul to harmonize the energy. It becomes a little bit more intentful in your imagination, but still there's a lot of allowance there. And then a little bit more in the physical, but still there's an allowance there. Nothing is forced. This is why that word force, I don't know, I think power is when it's not forced. I think people, for example, even when they are power lifters, right? I think people who have a lot of success and build up that power is those people who never redline and just went to exactly, you know, and allow the adaptation to take place a little more. And so they were always training in that sweet spot, not redlining. And it's funny how the strength rises this way. I think this is was like a Soviet Union secret, because they never did like 1 rep max. Like very rarely they would do that. Only like uh, like a couple of times a year or on competitions, right? And we see like, wait a second, you would not go for the maximum weight in the training, and there's other people who would try to always go for the maximum weight. But no, this is actually counterproductive. You're redlining. So they would just do like 80% of the weight, and maybe 60-80% of the weight, but they would not redline. And then when it comes time for the competition, then that's when they would go all in, and they would be surprised how the fuck they're so strong, because they kept on the region of adaptation and not force. So that's fascinating. And usually what happens is that nerves are, as one of the things I actually did research in of all the places in University of Tennessee, and I found out that most of the strength comes from nervous system engaging with the most muscle fibers. That, for example, sometimes when you have somebody who's kind of not that big, right, but their muscle is so dense and so strong, and you see like, what, like maybe even the size of the muscle is not that, but usually they have like bone density that's really high, which is this is the significance of nerves and blood flow is so good that nutrients are there, and this is why the bone density is so strong. And then you would also find that the nerves and the nerve impulses are so much more powerful than somebody else who don't have that. They may have the muscle, right, but they do not have that nerve connections that are enabling every little resource of the muscle, and blood vessels that are so, you see what I'm trying to say, the nerves and blood vessels actually are more important for strength than the size of the muscle. This is why, of course, I mean, if you see it, then the muscle size is important when you're maxing out your nerve connections and your blood vessel connections. Then the tertiary is your muscle fibers, and then it's important, of course. But you can, by maxing out that, you can have a lot of strength without any increase in size of the muscle. The density of the bone and the density of the muscle, sure, but okay, that's a different topic. But but since I'm talking about will, I want to talk about this will that is not redline. Okay. And if your will does not redline,
you would be surprised of like how much you can handle. Because you every time like you pushing something, your solar is gonna start being on fire. You notice that, right? Like your solar starts being on fire, and if you go too much, it's gonna be that fire that you cannot control. Your attention cannot control that fire. You cannot be focused, and so then it's just like that, like that uncontrolled fire, or that berserk energy. No, that's not it. That's all ego. But if you manage to keep your attention there on your solar plexus while you're doing the exercise, and it's burning up, and you get that allowance, right? And you do a little more, you give a little more. So you train yourself like that, and then sure enough, as you do the exercises, your solar plexus is not overburning anymore, and it's not panicking, and it's you can see you can do a lot more, and you see there's no exhaustion, and the feeling of your solar plexus burning properly, coherently, is so good. It's quite enjoyable feeling that even strength training becomes dope. You know, that's why to me right now it's so important to have that coherence on all the levels, and do it with intention and presence and all these different things, um, to 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 get stronger and fitter and awesomer. You know. All right, guys. So that's the use of will, and yeah. And if you just kind of doubt, or you see the people and you're looking for, it's like, what is the way? And you see like that's what people created spirituality to be. None of it is right. Everything has to start with this your own calibration of consciousness, which I do in one-on-one sessions. And I know what I'm doing, I have to say. um, you know, I want to say that it works. Let's just say it works. And it's, to me, it's fascinating how it's sort of like missed. It is missed. All these like therapies and analysis and all they all missing this thing. It's there. You have that faculty of consciousness, but it's being missed out on. And I also see like the people who have figured out, there's a bit of a problem with that, because a lot of the people, like for example Eckhart Tolle, it just came to them, right? So it sounds to me that the work has already been done, and there's some breakthrough that just happened, and now is in that steady state, right? But this is why, like, he's describing it, but he's not directly showing it to people. You see what I'm trying to say? Because it's almost like been given to him. Maybe in his past life he did all the work, and now he just had to break through.
It just had to allow for that to appear, and maybe that's it, you know. But the problem with this is that he has it, but he cannot give it. That's why a lot of people just stay there, and they really like just they enjoy their energy. That's why they're there, and they like, oh yeah, and they just keep on creating these belief systems. Oh, I must be this, I must be that, I must be, and just, but they never go freaking into it, and whoosh, you know, and so anyway. All right, guys. Anything else? How it works on this side? The will still works, okay? Um, but it's a quite elegant type of will. It is calm and collected, but there's accomplishments that are needed to be done for sure. There's no talk about like renouncing the society, which is exactly where you are. You live in this world, like, you know, and so it doesn't work like that. And I'm looking at where are the sources of control, and what makes certain types of laws to change and be enforced, what makes certain type of cultural beliefs to appear, and I'm asking questions where that shit is coming from, and I'm being interested in seeing maybe I can do something to patch this shit up, you know. And when I really look at what's really going on, what kind of law is corrupt, and just that one corrupt law creates a chain reaction, and, you know, possibilities to for unfairness, injustice, and abuse. If you just correct those few laws that are unconstitutional, then and then you can keep on, you know, gradually it can correct them, improve them, and you can have like a pretty good holistic society, which is, in my mind, it's very possible to do this when it's done right. And at the same time, I'm saying that people who are wisdom driven, and why aren't they, you know, going into those positions of power and authority, and making things just and fair? Because they do have a template, they understand how everything's supposed to be working. Why are they just coming here to get their own enlightenment or whatever they need, and then they fuck off, and they don't even bother with earth? I don't understand this. I think the whole point is to change the highest level of the governance to be holistic. That's the point of the game, to me at least. Until that is done, everything they're gonna do within it is gonna be so difficult. You're gonna have to protect it. You know, you see what I'm trying to say? It's possible it's being done. For example, like decentralized tech allows you to have different economy that is not officially accepted, right? But why is this right type of economy cannot be accepted officially? Why this Web 3.0 cannot be recognized as a main standard and protocol of the entire country and society? Why can't that be happen? It can totally happen, and it should happen, and it will happen. And this Web 2.0 can remain there as a competitor, but they will have to create the same type of quality and the same type of fairness that all these Web 3.0 ways of interacting do. And they would have to create some extra value for somebody to prefer that and pay them. Does that make sense? The standard has to be set to say this is the standard, right? You got to offer this and something on top of it. So this is why these subscription based things where people just like abusing and say, well, there's no other platform, so let's just fucking squeeze everybody, like they take over. This Web 2.0 model is like they take over and they do it at first like, hey, yeah, look how awesome it is. And then they take over. And once they take over, then they fucking squeeze the crap out of everybody. And then what are they going to do? Leave the platform? They already took the monopoly, right? But when there's another platform that is officially recognized by the government and people are informed about it as a main way of using it, just like an email is, nobody owns email. This is why nobody's supposed to own a social media or any media for that matter. And then they can say, all right, we do what is already available for people for free, but we're gonna have to work out something better than this is for them to even willing to pay the subscription. And okay, fair enough, if you do better service than it's available for free, you can fuck with people, you can put ads there in people's faces, you can manipulate people, you have to be very fucking clean and add some real value, then okay, it's legit, you can have that, but the standard is set. Does that make sense? I think that's a little bit more balanced way of looking at it. Anyway, so that's where I see the will supposed to be flowing first. It's the framework of the society that needs to be addressed first. And that may be like a last place that somebody may want to look at or do anything about it and just complain about it. Oh, that government, oh, nothing's going to change because everybody's corrupt in the government. Well, if you're so resistant to corruption and you can't reduce corruption, why aren't you going there? And some people are. And so you notice that people right now are motivated to go into the government, that are reason driven. They're interested in reducing the corruption. They're interested in getting people who are responsible for all these, atrocities and disasters and actually treason. That's what it is. Because I don't understand how even that fact of like creation of Federal Reserve is not a treason of United States of America. Because it corrupted the very fabric of dollar backed by gold. That's a treason. All of these people who did that supposed to be hanged. They're probably dead, but if anybody still, have any kind of, it's a treason. But how the fuck this was overlooked at? Because people in power were more corrupt and some people were not resistant to corruption, like Woodrow Wilson, for example. And they allowed this to happen, even though it's unconstitutional. I don't know if they say that the exchange of value must be equal and must be backed by something, of real value. I don't know if Constitution does that. If it's not, it's supposed to. Constitution perhaps supposed to be quite clear about the things that what constitutes the solid country, where it's non-negotiable things, like at the core principles of humanity that's not supposed to be corrupted. And I don't know where United States would be now if that thing would not have been done, right? Because I mean, it was pretty, something amazing was happening. There's this renaissance that was going on in the early like 20s. Besides these wars, America was on a very interesting trajectory. But then that these fucking parasites, man, they still came in and they still fucking managed to corrupt it. But even with that corruption, the structure was so good that you still had some pretty good years there, and some, you know, picket fence life was possible for a few people. Not for long. Now it's different story, you know. But now it's a mess. It is possible to clean it, but it is pretty messy. Every single, you know, state has their own story. Um, California, all this satanic Hollywood things that's been going on there. All this free sex. You know, I'm a free spirit, you know, and having this open sex with everybody, which is demonic, and that was classed as being free in the 60s and 70s. And still now, like it's coming back with psychedelics. Just for some reason, like that's what I've noticed in people who abuse psychedelics. They don't have boundaries, and they enter like some very dark fucking places by being this sexually free. You know, it's not sexually free at all. It's just being very sexually unselective. And it builds up that hurt. It builds up that karma. You see, it builds up that incoherence. That's what I've noticed. Like if a person goes, what? If a person goes takes psychedelic and then they join this hippie culture and whatnot, and it's like, you know, we're all free. Love is free. Let's fuck each other like hamsters. You know. They become darker and darker and darker, and more incoherence within their heart, more toxic, to the point where the psychedelics don't even do anything for them. And then they reach a crisis point, and the realization of, and I don't know now, what will they do? There's some permanent damage there is done for sure. Like, I don't know, like, I've noticed when I was sort of, you know, sinking into this crap, I've noticed, like, I know that I have these ideas and everything, and perhaps they were not my ideas. They were just like this, you know, false freedom ideas. I entertained them. I saw the feedback. I realized, and I was out. That was it. And I think that's legit. Anybody have to go through their own experience to know what it's like. But to stay there and, you know, and not to say that, to use any kind of intent to get out, that's laziness. And I always call it out. Say, hey, whatever the fuck you're doing, this is not freedom. This is not love. This is lust masquerading as freedom. And it's going to be very, very hurtful life for you if you are going to continue down that path. But I'm out. I'm out of that nonsense. So yeah, so they don't got it. They don't got the answers. These psychedelic hippies don't got the answers. Well, there you go. That's pretty much how the will works on this side.
This is why um, awakened spiritual person is not weak. I don't understand why this. I see that to be truly somebody who's connected to spirit. It's passion. It's pure passion. It's pure electricity. It's pure intensity. For somebody to be totally pacified, this is like, oh yeah, we have to be. It is so sickly. It's that very sickly energy. They're sick. They're not awakened. They're sick. And then they rationalize things like, oh, why after awakening, I get depressed? Or like, no, motherfucker, you're just depressed. You're not awakened. You escaped something that you should have faced, and now you're sick. You're just sick. you know? So there's just a mental disorder that you, or depersonalization that you class as awakening. And then, like I said, it's very sickly energy. And these people are usually very fucking triggered by somebody who's passionate. Because the energy, it's just really, it reminds them that they went the wrong way, and they have to go back. And this is opposite of being awakened. They went into the deeper sleep. But I know the difficulty. I know the allure. I know the sweetness of that, false feminine. It's that devouring mother, Oh yeah, you don't have to do anything, you're perfect and loved as you are. And it's like, oh yeah, I am. Yeah, okay, fine. Then I'll just, cuddle up in a fetal position, and that will be it. No, that's just a belief again, a toxic belief. Why don't you just look at it? Why don't you just look at that feeling that makes you feel alone, or that feeling that, that says that you're not loved or whatever, and find that feeling directly, and find that feeling of being loved, not by creating another one, but by unlabeling that thing that says that you are not loved. Does that make sense? Now, because somebody told you, it's like, oh, you are loved, I love you, you are loved. This is not it. This is, again, somebody's just trying to pacify that shit. But you gotta look at it yourself, in that feeling of being in love, and it will break down. And when there's no feeling of you not being loved, there's the feeling of you being loved. Once you destroy the incoherent, the coherence arises. You don't try to patch the incoherence with some sweet, that's way like a sugar covering crap, right? And some people need that heroin, need that, and other people are giving that heroin, but through, false empathy. But they're killing them. They're killing their soul. And it's always eventually 2, and then you can say 4, and then you can split it further into 16 and 32 and 64 if you want. But essentially it's just 2. There's always going to be 2 forces, that either like that tyrannical father force or devouring mother force, that is key problems. And you gotta, the narcissist and the empath, you have to not listen to any of them, right? Be very wary of these people, um, and just alchemize their energies. I always call them out on their bullshit, and I alchemize their energies because I can feel them. I can feel where they're coming. This is why they have this weird relationship with me, because they want to be around me, but at the same time they're scared to be around me, because the being in my presence destroys all of their belief system, and there's a realization that there's so much crap that they've been covering up. And but I know that there's part of them that wants, that part of them, that toxic part of them, wants to not be there anymore. But there's another part of them that keeps on sugarcoating it, wants to keep sugarcoating it, and does not want to be revealed. Is that thing happens, I see that mostly in women, but it's not just women. This is why the narcissist is not just men. There are a lot of women are like that, but primarily most of the time I see more likely narcissistic men, and then some narcissistic women, and then I also see some empaths men and some empaths as women, but mostly women are playing that type of game, that sugarcoating, nonsense. And they have very distinct energies. One is sort of like an unchained, fire, and the other one is this toxic water, that sickly sweet energy. That is, to me, it's like I said, like a black tar running, black tar lava. That's how it feels like. This is what's been happening in the last week. I know that the alchemy was about that, and this is the type of people I was coming in contact, and every single time I would call them on their bullshit, because they would try to, to do their magic on me. But come on, man, I know where you're coming from, so no. I always choose external discipline. I will call them out. That will trigger the alchemy in me, and I will go through the alchemy. That's the way I do it, you see, because trigger the demon attacks you, you take that energy and contribute to your prima materia. This is why external discipline is so important. Your presence may trigger that. That's enough, right? You're just it doesn't have to be all dramatic, right? But there's gonna be some emotional reaction upon you setting the boundary and speaking the truth. Now, of course, you have to be ready to alchemize a lot of energy, because they're gonna be dumping a lot of shit onto you. But that's the thing. This is like the principle of the alchemist, is that it's like a pillar of light, and all the moths coming in and just contributing to that light, growing and growing and growing. So you become almost like that. Walking trigger for the demons. But then if you do it right, the person goes through some sort of breakdown, positive breakdown, because they're externally to impose their belief system onto you and project the shit did not work. Then project their internal emotion and attack you. That did not work, because that just burned everything up, and then they end up being freaking naked. And then
they have nothing to grab hold of, and then they just fall into who they truly are. And then whether they like it or not, they're gonna have to figure that out. And hopefully they figure it out. And maybe then there's real tears, real release from suffering, real realization of the damage that you've done by being a tyrannical or being devouring. And it's cool, you know? Now that you're free of that, you're free. You're free of that, you know? So there we go. That's the way we do it. We live life. We alchemize the energies. We stay. It's not easy to live on the side of truth because everybody's gonna start jumping their shit onto you. It's like, oh, you call them on their bullshit, and they throw their shit onto you, and say, okay, take more manure. Thank you. I'm gonna grow some more flowers. And now that the only thing that was keeping them going is gone, now they're breaking down. Because they can mess with somebody who's not an alchemist, and they could just spread that poison. But when they jump on somebody who is an alchemist, big fucking surprise. They burn up, and that's good. Like I'm against ego because soul is the opposite of ego. I know how it feels. I know when it rises inside of me. I don't see it anymore as mine or somebody else's. If I'm interacting with somebody and their incoherence is, palpable, and all I was doing is just being in myself and my own energy and feeling amazing, but that triggers them, then I'm like, and then they attack me emotionally even, then okay, come here, motherfucker, and I'll take it, and I'll burn it up and increase my intensity even more. That's what I'll do. But the person who's the demon that's been doing that has been alchemized. The person loses that and then becomes real. You see what I'm trying to say? So by attacking me, they liberate themselves. And I feel the energy of genuine soul. It's very light, it's very real. It has a natural will and everything, and I feel no problem with this person. If somebody who released the demon, I have no problem with that person. I may have seen them before with the demon and then after demon, and they may have been super nasty before with the demon, but now I see that it's gone. Now that they're completely different, I will treat them different. I feel that stuff. A person may be like next to me and I immediately feel their energy. And again, I'm saying, like, I was like, okay, what the fuck have you been doing? You've probably been going to these fucking culty parties, these ceremonies, or whatever the fuck you're doing, but you've been probably fucking around with the wrong crowd, and that's why you are right now like a fucking drug addict, the energy is so like lost. Anyway, not judging is not easy, but at least we do it. All right, guys, peace, and I'll see you in the next one.